Hey guys, this is Ryan here with another video. Now this video is ostensibly about a battle report, but actually I want to talk about lists. Specifically, a while ago I made a video talking about infiNity lists that I called big boy lists. These were all lists that were inspired by a very specific Steel Phalanx list that I originally stole from XNAD. That list, which is the big boy list in Steel Phalanx, I have been running it a lot, I have been enjoying it enormously, and my buddy Gyro and I were inspired to try to see if we can come up with something similar in other factions. And since making that video, I have been playing a bunch of games with the military orders version of the big boy list, which was called Altar Boys. Now, I have been having a lot of fun with Altar Boys. However, I have also come to the decision that Altar Boys are bad. They are not worthy of being in the same club as the big boy list but in Steel Phalanx, and quite frankly, I'm not sure that I would recommend this list in general. Now, I'm only one player and I haven't played that many games with these guys, so if you watch this video and want to give them a shot, let me know how it goes. I'd happily hear that I might be doing something wrong. And while I wouldn't normally make a video talking about how I played a bad list, in this particular case, there's some lessons about infiNity that are interesting to learn in trying to describe why the big boy list works in Steel Phalanx and why Altar Boys does not work here. So let's get started. I'm actually going to start by talking about the big boy list by XNAD. I've talked about these guys before, but I want to talk about them here because it'll help compare against Altar Boys. This is essentially the all-stars of the Steel Phalanx. You have Achilles, of course. You have an Enomatarchos with Machaon, Phoenix, and Ajax. Into that Enomatarchos, you can have Hector, or you can have Akmon, or you can have Akmon duo with Achilles. Other than that, you have 2 Flash Pulse bots and 2 Netrods. Now there is a lot to like about this list. First, you have a ton of orders. Between Hector's Lieutenant +1 order and Strategos and Akmon's Tactical Awareness order, you could easily spend 13 orders ramboing across the field. Second, it's very tough. Between all the mimetism and wounds and armor, a lot of these guys are really hard to actually put a sticking hit on them. You might be able to put Phoenix NWI, but he's just going to fall prone, and then Machaon will run over and doctor him. Even Akmon, who's kind of the weakest of all these guys, still has 2 wounds. The end result is that it's quite difficult to actually put the hurt on this list with any particular piece. As a general rule, anything that's going to be efficient at taking out Phoenix because of his mimetism is not going to be efficient at taking out Ajax with his wounds and armor. I've routinely seen opponents become completely pinned by Phoenix's ARO, or spend, 4 or 5 orders hammering Ajax with a core-linked HMG and merely put him NWI before he guts to safety. Even the Lamids are remarkably sturdy for their cost. I mean, they've got mimetism, they've got flash pulses, and I'm typically putting them prone, hidden in some corner of my deployment zone. This toughness is in many ways a defining feature of the big boy lists. One strategy for dealing with a tough target in infiNity is to go kill all the other order-generating cheerleaders. If you're facing an avatar, then go kill all the Imitrons and Dadarouzis and whatever else that are around, and the avatar won't have any orders. But that doesn't work against a big boy list because there is nothing else. I can very easily force you to have to go through all of the Steel Phalanx heroes before you get access to my Netrods and Lamids. And if you've done that, well, I mean, it's not like you're bypassing the tough units to kill the cheerleaders, you're just face-checking against the tough heroes. The third thing is the list is remarkably flexible. Because Akmon is a wild card, I can either put him in a duo with Achilles and slingshot him forward with the Tactical Awareness order, or I can put him with this Enomatarchos here and use the Tactical Awareness order on them. Achilles as a disposable fast attack piece is sort of a strange concept in general, but it works really good here because he's got stealth, and if he does somehow get hacked or EM'd, Akmon can fix him. And of course he can deal lots of damage, and I can still follow up with the Enomatarchos after that. On the other hand, if I send the Enomatarchos out, and, I don't want them all to die for nothing, but if they end up parked in my opponent's deployment zone, forcing my opponent to deal with them, after they've wiped out my Enomatarchos at great cost to themselves, I can still follow that up with 8 orders of Achilles. This flexibility means that they can actually face a wide variety of threats fairly reliably. Finally, mostly because of the Enomatarchos, I have a lot of utility. Of course, I've got the 2 specialists with Machaon and Akmon, but I've also got a lot of NWI. If troopers do go NWI, then I can cancel that state while moving with Machaon. And on top of that, I've got martial arts, I've got eclipse smoke, I've got regular smoke, I've got dodging really well, and because there's 4 men in the Enomatarchos, they all have 6th sense. In other words, the list is quite robust against a lot of threats that might be hard or soft counters to other things. Warbands, MSV snipers, and hidden deployment missile launchers are just not things that are going to shut this list down. And of course, they're quite deadly. This is both in melee, but also with shooting. I mean, Ajax has burst 5, damage 14 combi rifles, and that's nothing to sneeze at. So all in all, this is a really powerful list. I've been running it for a long time, and I've been enjoying it for the entire time. Now, I am mostly running this in Vol SC leagues where a single combat group can't have 2 orders stripped, and this does mean that when I play it in a context in which I can have 2 orders stripped if I go first, my tempo is a little bit off. You know, for example, I'll choose an attack strategy and then run out of orders at the end. But that's a matter of practice and habit. I don't think that's necessarily a negative commentary on the list itself. 11 orders is likely plenty to get done most of what you need to get done. The only two things that I've found this list struggles with are enemy hackers who can toss a pitcher into your deployment zone and long-range gunfighting. The hackers can isolate Hector, and if they target my guys and start dropping missiles, my guys concentrate a lot of value into a small package, and they don't have ECM like most tags. As far as long-range guns go, it's basically just Phoenix. And Burst 3 heavy rocket launchers on BS-13 is fine, but he really needs to rely on that Mimetism -6 in order to have success. Anything armored, anything with a decent burst and ARO, anything with Mimetism really makes it so that he stops being efficient and reliable. Of course, I can just smoke it and move on with my life, but, it's something to think about. So that's the big boy list. With that in mind, let's look at altar boys. The F here indicates that I've gone through A, B, C, D, and E. Some of those I think you saw in the previous video if you watched it. But ultimately, this is a big boys list that is trying to be built around a Crusade-link with Joan of Arc and the Hospitallers. I own the Hospitallers in real life, I like the miniatures, and I wanted to play them. My hope was that the lesson and philosophy of the big boy list in Steel Phalanx would help improve the viability of the Crusade-link in military orders. And, I think it did to some extent. It's just that not quite enough. Talking about the list, we begin with the Crusader core. You have a Hospitaller with HMG, Joan of Arc with multi-rifle, Knight of Santiago killer hacker with Tinbot, Hospitaller Doctor, and Knight of Justice missile launcher. As an alternate, I did include this Order Sergeant with heavy rocket launcher. That guy can't join a Crusade link, but he can join a Hospitaller link. So if you want to have Joan be separate so you can use her inspiring leadership order, you can leave Joan behind and put the Order Sergeant into the link. Then you've got the Tikbalang. The thought is that the Tikbalang is kind of similar to Achilles, a solo fast attack piece with Mimetism and AP gunfighting potential. And then you've got 3 cheerleaders. The War Corps and the Tech B both become regular thanks to Joan of Arc, and then Fugazi is just a flash pulse bot. So, like the big boy list in Steel Phalanx, Altar Boys does concentrate around this core, and it has very few weak things that you can shoot at separately. Also, like the Steel Phalanx big boy list, most of the dudes in the Crusade core have martial arts and decent CC. None of them are actually as much of a winner as Ajax, but they're still fairly robust against things like warbands. When making this list, I was also particularly excited about the Knight of Santiago because of his killer hacking device and Tinbot. Given the vulnerability of the original big boy list to hackers who drop pictures in my deployment zone, I was kind of thinking it might be nice to have a Santiago who can, shoot back with Trinity if that happens. Shooting back with only Whip 13 and Burst 1 isn't super likely to work, but the Santiago has BTS 3, a Tinbot, and 2 wounds, so it might take the opponent a while to cut him down. Next, I was super excited about the long-range gunfighting potential. The core-linked Hospitaller HMG may have the best numbers of any HMG in the game. BS-14 to start with, plus 3 for the link and burst 5, that's all pretty nice. He doesn't have AP, but, against basically anything else, that should be able to shred. Meanwhile, the Knight of Justice with his missile launcher is also BS-14, and he sits on an Armor 5 BTS-9 package. I have often found that missile launchers in ARO can just win you the game if you get lucky and win the face-to-face. Imagine spattering the enemy tag or heavy infantry or something, And I've also found that core-linked missile launchers can be a pretty good answer to things like tags on ARO. If you can outrange a Merut or a Salamander or something like that, you'll have an advantage in terms of ballistic skill, and if you win, the missile launcher is so dangerous that you can often force the tag to back off and fail guts. Other than that, you got Joan for close-range gunfighting, ballistic skill 15, and a multi-rifle with extra damage is nothing to sneeze at. The Santiago has a combi rifle as well, and the Hospitaller Doctor can pick people up if they go down and has a multi-rifle. So that's the link. None of them have the mimetism that the Steel Phalanx guys have, but I'm hoping that the higher ballistic skill and the core link can kind of offset that. Mimetism -3 and BS +3 are sort of interchangeable. Lastly, there is, at least on paper, a little bit of similarities in terms of order efficiency. The Tikbalang has a tactical awareness order, and if you count Joan of Arc's inspiring leadership as another order in and of itself, you hit 12 orders. And 12 is kind of close to the 13 orders of the original big boy list. That was the theory on paper. In practice, it really does not feel like the same number of orders because it really isn't. But it's still nice to get over 10 orders if you're running only a single combat group. So that's all the goods of this particular list. Let's talk about what's missing. First of all, there's no smoke. I've played a couple of games where my poor knights have to cautious move because I'm afraid that there's a Noctifer that's just going to appear and shoot me. Things got so bad that I actually was originally theory crafting on the idea of trying to just expose my list to take a free Noctifer shot, and then hoping that I could keep the Doctor alive to bring people up afterwards. If the Noctifer's on the table, then maybe the Hospitaller can gun him down. But until that happens, the whole link just feels so pinned by hidden deployment stuff, just because of the simple fact that I lack any kind of smoke. Next, I don't have the order efficiency of the big boy list. The Inspiring Leadership order is not the same as a regular order in the list, and the Teak Belong's Tactical Awareness order has to be spent on the tag, which does me no good if what I want to do is run around with my link. Finally, the Knight of Santiago in practice is just not able to reliably stop an opponent from dropping a pitcher and hacking me. I've actually found that the best thing to do is to put the Knight of Justice in front and the Santiago hacker further back. With BTS 9, the Knight of Justice is difficult to shift in terms of hacking, and then I can keep the Tinbot safe so that for every time the other guy tries to hack me, the Tinbot is providing a penalty. That's not really the kind of success that I was hoping to have. It's fun to fry enemy hackers through their own repeaters on my turn with the Santiago, but in terms of providing a defense, the Santiago just does not do that. So, all of which is to say that we've really lost a lot of the things that make the big boy list special, and what we've traded for it is long-range gunfighting potential. Now, this long-range gunfighting potential is excellent. The Knight of Justice missile launcher is crazy deadly. The Hospitaller HMG is an excellent HMG. And it is super fun to flank something with Joan and gun them down with BS-21. But is this long-range gunfighting potential enough to compensate for all the weaknesses that you have? I think the answer is, unfortunately, no. So, let's talk about the battle report. Here is the map and my deployment. I don't actually remember the mission. I think it might have been Tempo War, which is a Vol SC variant on Supremacy, but the mission has very little impact on the battle report itself. The map is by my buddy Gyro. It's called Flash Flood. It makes use of these really cool assets, and actually the table is set up so that as turns go by, the water level rises. You obviously don't have to play with those rules, but it's kind of fun to have the aquatic terrain levels rising as the game goes on. For my part, I'm up against my opponent's combined army. They have chosen to go first after waiting the die roll, which means that I have to go second and deploy. The most important thread is that over in this building on my opponent's side is Bit and Kiss. Bit and Kiss are excellent hackers, but more importantly, they are extremely reliable at dropping a pitcher. In fact, I think they may be the most reliable pitcher throwers in the entire game. I am starting as far away from them as I can, but even then, I need to make sure that all of my dudes are standing up so that I can shoot Bit and Kiss as they try to make their run across the field. I simply cannot afford to allow Bit and Kiss to get close. Worse, because my opponent has chosen to withhold 2 models without spending a command token, I know that my opponent is running an Avatar. The Avatar with his Scepter is super dangerous, and I cannot afford to have my poor knights get Scepterized. It's really tempting to want to hide everyone prone out of sight, but I'm worried that if that happens, the Avatar is just going to rock over and Scepterize people, and I only have 10 people to start with, and I can't afford to let that happen. So, for all these reasons, I feel as if I am forced to have an active defense. Essentially, I have a weakness, and I have to compensate for that weakness by relying on the ballistic skill of my knights. Unfortunately, this is just not going to work out for me. So let's go ahead and talk about deployment. These buildings actually have walls here, 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 and here, but we've turned them off so that you can see them. So all these knights that are standing there are in cover. I have the Knight of Justice missile launcher, I have a Knight Hospitaller HMG, I have an Order Sergeant with a heavy rocket launcher, I have Joan, I've hidden my Doctor back here, I'm using this guy as the Santiago because I think it looks cool, this is the Fugazi, this is a Tech B, this is a War Core, and I withheld the Teak Belong. Basically, everyone is standing up. I'm thinking that the Hospitaller and the Knight of Justice need to be up so that they can see and shoot things. I probably should have had Joan and the Santiago prone, but the fact of the matter is that even if they had been prone, that would have just kept them alive and not prevented the oncoming storm. And here's my opponent's deployment. He knows that I'm running Altar Boys. He knows that my Altar Boys is a little bit of a silly meme list. So he's running a silly meme list of his own. In particular, he has an Avatar and a Sphinx and Bit and Kiss, and then a whole bunch of other stuff. Like, I don't know, Imatron, Flash Pulse Bot, Imatron. It almost doesn't matter. The important parts are the Avatar and the Sphinx. Having him plop down his Avatar right here, I plop down my Teak Belong right there. That having been done, all that's left is for the game to begin. The first thing my opponent does is activate his Avatar and shred my Teak Belong. During deployment, I had carefully calculated the squares, and I was really hoping my Teak Belong would be outside of 32 inches on the Avatar. If that were the case, then the Avatar would be shooting me burst 4 at -9 because of my mimetism, range, and cover. Meanwhile, I could be dodging on, an 11. Not great, but something that wouldn't necessarily be guaranteed to fail. As it happens though, while we start just outside 32 inches, the Avatar is able to move forward about an inch and to get within 32 inches. Worse, because of the Tikbalong's position, I can't actually guts to safety, so the Tikbalong does get shredded in, I don't know, like 3 orders by the Avatar, very efficiently. Let's switch to this view. At that point, the Avatar is, I think, something like in this position, and it is the simplest thing for the Avatar to now just go one by one and slice apart all of my dudes. I think the Avatar first goes to here to see the Hospitaller HMG, slices him to pieces. I think I go unconscious in 1 order. Next up is the Knight of Justice. The Knight of Justice is at 0 range band because we're within 24 inches, and he's not core linked anymore, so again, the Knight of Justice gets shredded. The Avatar, I think, moves into here. He then sees the Santiago. Santiago gets shredded. And once all that's done, and it hasn't even cost that many orders, the Sphinx, which is over there, comes running around all the way up to here. I think it's actually on the top level and starts blasting away at my stuff with Sphinx powers. The Sphinx actually doesn't do super much. I think maybe it kills to the dead state, this Hospitaller and this Santiago, and it ends up here not in marker state. The problem is I've lost my core and I've lost my Tikbalong. I don't have any tools that can challenge the Avatar at range, and I do have a Sphinx that's sitting right there. Now, the Sphinx is just sitting there in marker state, and I've got Joan, and Joan's pretty good at close combat, so maybe I can kill the Sphinx, but even if I do that, I mean, so what? There's an Avatar still there. And I think in a more serious competitive game, Gyro would not have left his Sphinx in a situation where Joan could go kill it. So I do make the best of my turn. I do play as best as I can. I think I successfully medikit the Knight of Justice up. I think I successfully engage the Sphinx and try to kill it in CC. But the fundamental problem remains that my list has had its back broken. And that really does in many ways conclude the battle report. I do what damage I can. My opponent isn't quite able to put the stick on me with anything because, I leave all my guys prone, but he doesn't have to. My list is crippled and I can't fight back. So it was this situation that really led me to believe that the Altar Boys list just wasn't going to work. Compared to the Big Boy list, I have less mimetism, I have no smoke, and I'm generally just less able to endure this kind of attack. I have to compensate with active ballistic skill shooting. And while we are better than the Big Boy list at shooting, it doesn't really matter because you can't outshoot something like the Avatar. In fact, generally speaking, ballistic skill 14 with 2 wounds and armor 5 is just not going to be able to handle the kind of active gunfighting that a lot of lists can bring. Shang-Chi, for example, would have been able to put the Knight of Justice either unconscious or forcing him to guts to safety in a single order. And lots of factions to have access to good shooters. I mean, maybe not Shang-Chi tier, but you get the idea. So, all in all, I was kind of hoping that the extra shooting capability of the Altar Boys list might be able to give it some viability, but this game really highlights how that's not a viable strategy in general. All that said, I will probably keep the Altar Boys list in my army box when I go to play with people. It is a remarkable amount of fun to have a ballistic skill 14 missile launcher shooting at things. And if I'm in an environment in which I don't really care about being good, it is a lot of fun to basically be hamstrung and lack the tools that I'm so used to having. It's kind of fun to play a list whose answer to a Noctifer is bait the Noctifer shot and hope for the best. I also think that I could have played this game better. For example, instead of withholding the Tikbalong and putting him here, and instead of trying to, carefully gauge that range to be just outside of 32 inches and failing, I probably should have put the Tikbalong here at a safe spot where he could guts to safety, and I probably should have withheld the Knight of Justice missile launcher. Likewise, I probably should have put the Santiago prone, and exposing my missile launcher to a situation in which he could get shot at from within 24 inches, like here, probably wasn't the best idea. Similarly, I did get unlucky. Basically, every single one of my knights took 2 wounds in one go and thus couldn't guts to safety. And if they had stayed alive, they would have passed on the link bonuses to the rest of their friends. So I don't feel like this battle report represents me playing this list to the best of their ability, but it does highlight the flaws that this list has. And it's because of those flaws that I'm thinking that this list kind of doesn't need to be in my active roster for things that I think are cool and exciting and good. What it lacks relative to the Big Boy list in Steel Phalanx: mimetism, smoke, outrageous martial arts ability, and most importantly, heaps and heaps of orders, are unfortunately not able to be compensated with what it has, which is essentially excellent shooting capability. So, Altar Boys, I'm gonna have to set you aside for now. I am interested in trying out other variations on Big Boy lists. This one is a variation on Altar Boys from an earlier iteration. This was C in the list, but having realized that the orders were something really important, what we instead did is we went with the Knight Commander with the Lieutenant +1 order, and then took a couple of NCO profiles that can leverage that. I probably won't give this one a try next, but it's on the list of things to try in general. What I am going to try next, though, is the foreign company version of the big boy list. This is the B team, where B stands for boy. You still have excellent shooting because of the orcs with their BS-14. You also have the absurd ballistic skill of the bolts with their marksmanship. And you get to couple all of that with folks like Senior Massacre, who have EM grenades, and folks like Valkyrie, who can berserk with the best of them. We still have something of an order problem. Only 11 orders, 12 if you count the Chimera's Impetuous. But I'm genuinely curious to see if this list can have the same sort of feel of the big boy list in Steel Phalanx, while not being in Steel Phalanx. Anyway, I'm excited to give it a shot, and I'll keep you all in the loop. And I think that's basically that. Thanks for watching, folks, and I'll catch you around.